Now there's all kinds of different people in this world. There's only one pie.
Welcome to the Teammate Apart podcast, the podcast designed to teach freelancers, contractors, and remote workers, really anyone working apart, how to build better relationships with those they work with and those they work for. I'm your host, Ryan Rogar. Before we get started, financial support for the Teammate Apart podcast Season 2 is provided by R2, a fully distributed brand relationship consultancy. R2 has specific expertise and experience in helping service companies grow, develop, and maintain impactful relationships through world-class brand strategy and design. R2 supports the world's best distributed companies by providing valuable insights, strategy, empathy, and tactical expertise to help them foster truly meaningful relationships from top management to top consumer. If the success of your business depends on the relationships you make, then you need R2. To learn more or to request a call, simply visit r2mg.com/podcast. That's r2mg.com/podcast. R2, relationships squared. Also, financial support comes from teammateapart.com. Leveraging 20 plus years of global agency and creative hiring expertise, Teammate Apart provides distributed organizations with access to the best and brightest creative talent from around the world. Through deep understanding of client needs and meaningful relationships with talent, Teammate Apart facilitates a sort of virtual handshake between prospective employer and prospective employee to reduce risk and eliminate doubt from creative hiring decisions. Take a step towards filling that creative-shaped void in your distributed team by visiting teammateapart.com/talent. That's teammateapart.com/talent to learn more. Finally, financial support comes from supporters like you. Members of our Happy Little Podcast community can make contributions directly to the show by visiting teammateapart.com/podcast and clicking on the donation link. Donations can be in any amount and go a long way towards keeping this show on the air. If you appreciate the work we're doing and would like to get involved, just visit teammateapart.com/podcast, click the donate button, and you're on your way. Thank you for your continued support. And now, on to the show. Welcome back to the Teammate Apart podcast. Today's special guest is Executive and Performance Coach and HR and Operations Manager at Aragon One, Monica Zeng. Monica is a people-first HR professional in the crypto space with an international background specialized in strategy, management, and executive coaching for startups and founders. She joins us today to discuss her innovative, fully remote hiring process, coaching team members on soft and leadership skills, onboarding at a distance, and the importance of self-assessment and evaluation. Calling in from Madrid, Spain, please join me in welcoming to the show the incredible Monica Zeng. Hey, Monica, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you for inviting me.
Of course, I'm so thrilled to have you, and really looking for this forward to this conversation. We had one opportunity prior to this call to actually meet each other on the phone, and we had a really great conversation. I was thrilled to get to know you then, and now I'm thrilled to death to share your knowledge with our audience. So welcome.
Thank you very much. I'm excited to share more about this space and learning from other people that are sharing their experiences as well.
Yeah, it's awesome. And I'm really looking forward to it. So let's start a little bit at the beginning, Monica. Let's talk about who you are, where you come from, how you got into this world.
So I think my background is a little bit unconventional because I actually dropped out from school. So I started in the job market directly. I used to work in marketing, and I started my career in Silicon Valley. I'm from Spain, so going to California was like a big thing. And I think like being surrounded by the startup ecosystem there, I learned a lot about innovation and how teams work there. That it's very different from how startups and businesses are built in Spain. So when I came back to Spain, I had a chance to get involved in a startup incubator. And I think like through that experience, I actually discovered that everything that had to do with humans, management, and talent development was like something that I was passionate about. So eventually I quit that job and started my own HR agency. And right now, besides like collaborating with some projects in my free time mostly, I'm full-time HR director in Aragon One, which is a blockchain project.
Yeah, no, that might be good. Can we talk a little bit about Aragon One? Do you mind just talking about the nature of the work that you guys are doing over there? I think it's kind of you're a unique individual, but that's also a unique platform that you're working with.
Yeah, we're doing tools for online collaboration. and we're leveraging blockchain technologies to create like new forms of governance. And we believe that both blockchain technologies and the type of relationships that we're building online, such as communities, can create new forms of social coordination. And we're trying to build the tools that can enable, and kind of protocols as well, and incentives that can enable that social coordination. We're a startup, but we're also like an open source project, community run. So it has like two sides. And it's fun because like human resources management involves both like managing this focused centralized team, but at the same time, it's also like developing this more community oriented culture.
Yeah, no, I think that's really interesting. And I think it's, especially apropos to sort of the future of remote work. I think so much is going to be, in and around building strong communities and being able to do that in a safe and secure way. And so I think the work you're doing over there is just awesome. So one of the things, so Aragon One, as I understand it anyway, is a fully distributed company. And, as such, and as their HR director, obviously hiring is something that you guys have to consider. Do you mind talking a little bit about just sort of the hiring process, or how you go through hiring for a fully distributed team on such a unique project?
So for us, being a distributed team has an advantage. That is that for us, talent is international. We don't have the constraint of having to hire in a certain place. But at the same time, we have like some limitations, that it's like the talent pool is huge. So sorting out all this talent and making sure that it fits our team can be like a very long process. And actually our process is quite long. And at the same time, you have to think about how to like align in terms of incentives, compensation, and kind of onboarding different time zones across like the whole team, right? Our hiring process is fully online because we're remote, but we actually, when we could get people traveling, we will have like the last part of the hiring process in person in our offices in Switzerland.
And so how have you adapted, I guess, since COVID and since, the push to work from home, everybody's doing their things. How have you had to adapt your process for dealing with that?
So since our process is quite long, like, let me tell you a little bit about like the steps. The first step is just like we get the application, and then I ask some like screening questions through email. The people that go through that stage, then they have like an initial conversation with me, which is fully focused on cultural fit and kind of qualifying the candidate. And then they have 2 steps to meet the team, and it's more like the technical assessment, both take home an assignment and then team interview. Then they meet the founders. And finally, there's like this trial week or this in-person step that we had to adapt to being just remote. It kind of, at this, like from one hand, it fits better like the real day-to-day job, because the day-to-day it's going to be remote. But I definitely miss the part of like actually kind of socializing and seeing this person in different type of contexts, because we used to like go for dinners, go for drinks, do some tourism in Switzerland, and we kind of have to sacrifice that.
So in sort of a normal world, does Aragon One normally get together every now and then? Like, do you guys have these in-person sessions? I know so many remote companies are doing that. And I think for sort of people who might be new to remote work or whatever, they assume, we must be remote. We're remote all the time. We never see each other. But I think that, it is critical. And I think it's worth acknowledging, that it's still important to meet with each other on occasion, and just sort of have a little moment of in real life time. Is that something that you guys do at Aragon One? And then also, now that you're not doing it, I mean, is that aspect of the relationship still totally online?
Yeah, we used to do that, and it was an important part of our workflow. For us, like, working remotely has a lot of advantages, but it's not good for everything. I think remote work is very good for focus work once everything is planned, and you just need to like make sure that you execute. And coordination is just like making sure that everyone is aligned, but you don't need to do like a lot of like abstract thinking, brainstorming, and so on and so forth. So we actually used to meet like once a quarter for one full week that was fully scheduled. So we had like a schedule with specific workshops and specific team building activities, that everything was like very carefully planned. So we could do all the strategy, planning, and coordination and more abstract work in that environment, as well as getting to meet the team. We we take like, for us it was very important, like lunch and dinners, so people could like socialize between them and get to know like each other beyond like the work environment. And we always had like team building activities with very specific goals. And then we also had team building activities that were more focused on just having fun and just like go for surfing, for example, or just like barbecues. And right now it's true that with the pandemic, we are not able to do that. And we definitely feel the frustration of not seeing each other and brainstorming that effectively. The main change that happened is that we had to change it from a full-time schedule to a part-time schedule, because want it or not, like it's back-to-back calls for 8 hours, and that definitely doesn't scale. And we're across different time zones, that will mean that people will have to wake up very early or stay very late. So yeah, we changed to like 1 week of full-time offsite to 1 week of part-time offsite. But we still kept like some stuff like team building activities, workshops, and brainstorming. But I have to recognize that it's just not the same.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense. And I think, I mean, everybody's adapting. So I think right now people are especially flexible or willing to sort of be patient through this.
Yeah.
You mentioned a lot about team building. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about just sort of the types of things that you do as team building exercises online. As you guys are working now, 100% over Zoom, and you're having to do these in-person meetings over video calls or whatever. How are you, like, what sorts of things are you doing? I mean, you hear about the online happy hours and the coffee breaks and these kinds of things that are going on, but is there something unique that you guys are up to?
I'd say that for us, there are two types of team building activities. The one that are for fun, and the ones that are focused on kind of for team development. So it's very similar to like personal development that you will think for a specific team member, such as like, we need to get this person to have better communication skills, or we need this person to have better leadership skills, or the ability to give better feedback whatsoever, but translated to company-wide. So for the fun type of team building activities, we use like online games. And the last time we did a virtual offsite, what we did was like a treasure hunt. So we divided the team into smaller teams. So there was a component of like competition. So to see like which one was like finishing the treasure hunt earlier. And then we recorded everything on like, it was like all visual, so you could see each other. There was like a team lead. So when you assign roles, there's a little bit of competition, and you split the people in smaller teams, so engagement is higher. It definitely results in you have better results than when you do like a very open team building activity that everyone is supposed to participate at the same time, because there's always people that they're not gonna be as active, right? And be like a little bit shadowed by other people. For the more focused, goal-focused team building activities, what we do is to define that strategy or that goal first, and based on that, I made up like the team building activities. Some stuff that we did, for example, was like, we need to get, for example, we had like a very intense quarter. Everyone was very stressed, and people were just like having a very constant negative, overwhelming feeling. So the goal was like people were able to give each other more like positive feedback, or be less critical, or be like less formal and serious to each other, and be able to just share the same feedback, but in a way that was not like as kind of just like develop charisma, right? So we will design team building activities that were just like, well, you need to say this type of feedback, or you need to tell these people this, but you have to try to set this specific tone, or you have to try to fit in these specific words. So you put like some ingredients there, so they get used to like new ways of thinking and saying the same thing that they will say in another way. And that's just one example of something very specific to that specific situation.
Yeah, no, I love that. That's awesome. I wanted to circle back a little bit just to the hiring, but maybe look at it from the other side, from the role of the employee, or the prospective employee anyway. I just wondered if you had any sort of advice for, I mean, as you mentioned, the talent pools can be huge. You basically have the whole world to draw from.
How can people stand out in such a large and diverse hiring pool? There are obviously a lot of people that have similar characteristics and things. So how do you make determinations? I mean, are you leveraging software to sort of do some initial filtering and things like that, just to get sort of a core group? And then from that core group, how are you netting people out?
I think like our volume of application is pretty high, but even that, I don't like to make like automated filters. I think everyone who took more or less the time to apply to the company deserves like some sort of attention. So I personally go through every single application that we get, and they always get an answer whether they're rejected or they continue with the hiring process. I'd say that the people that get the least attention are the people who send like templates or automated messages, or not even like a message in the application form. I think that's like an immediate deal breaker. You're not showing like enough kind of interest in our company. And then for the people that actually make like more personalized messages, what I take into account is actually that they understand and they care about our mission. We work in the blockchain space, which is something that it can be either very sweet because there's like a lot of opportunity and earning easy money. So it attracts a lot of people very easily. But there's very few that actually go deeper into like what is the technology about and what are you working. And just like making a few references of like blog posts related to our team, or making references to our values, or some sort of generic content, not technical content, can like make a difference for the candidates, so they have more information about us, but also in the application process, because you're actually showing me that you care.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. Can you talk just one step deeper about the sort of determining cultural fit? So I think, so much of this, I mean, is very subjective, obviously. It depends on who, the company doing the hiring and things like that. But how have you, as a company, Aragon One, and then you as the HR director, I guess, sort of developed a culture, whatever that culture might be? And then how do you go for finding people who fit it?
I think like cultural fit, there's, so the traditional, when you think about culture, you think about like, I don't know, gender transitions, kind of where you worked in the past, whatsoever. But for us, culture is defined by the things that you care about. And there's some people that they care about, I don't know, recognition. There's some people that they care about, I don't know, money. Some people that they care about innovation, and they just want to get into the company because they care that it's just like high tech. For us, what we look at is that we want people that care about doing things the best they can. So they kind of seek for excellence, and they care more about the common win of the company, the project, the community even, than their personal win. And I make sure to tell them that we care a lot about talent development, so they're not going to miss that part. But for me, it's very important that for everyone to grow effectively, they care also for this like team attitude, right? And the way I try to look at this type of things in an interview is asking abstract questions. Normally, people that kind of answer very correctly to standard questions, and they just give me like what I expect to listen, then those people are probably not the type of people that care enough about things. And when they answer my questions in a very personal way or in a very genuine way, probably we can get deeper and really see if they're like this type of cultural fit.
Okay. Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. And maybe segues nicely into sort of this next step. So let's say you've made the decision then to hire somebody based on these different characteristics. You feel like they fit sort of culturally. They seem to align with you in terms of mission and vision, that sort of thing. Once you've brought them on board, what does that look like?
It's very structured. I want to say like, like I talk about a lot of our culture, and that we care about this kind of these abstract things, and just like more the personal stuff, which is from the outside it might seem like super subjective, but we love processes. I personally love processes, and I want things to be very kind of you can compare things very easily, and you can like make things very predictable. So our onboarding process is like super structured. We have a 1 month onboarding process that has like different steps. You have an onboarding coach, which is probably your manager or the person that you're going to be working the closest with. And then we set the expectation since the beginning that we don't expect you to be productive until the 3rd month. So that like sets like people to be more comfortable to learning, which is like the objective of the onboarding process, more than like executing badly and being productive too early. Our onboarding process has different sections. The first section is just generic, and it might last like 1 to 2 weeks. That is just like onboarding you on all our tooling. For a remote team, tooling is super important. So it's crucial that when we onboard people, let them know how they're supposed to use every single tool, and actually having a list of tools that they're supposed to use as well. After that, they will get like a team onboarding. So that means that I want them to talk to everyone in the team. As a remote team, you don't see each other in the corridor. You don't take a coffee. You don't go for a beer. So you have to push and force people to actually talk at least once before they get the chance to have like more entire team call. And then they will also have like an onboarding of like kind of, they have to present themselves in a different context. So in the next all hands, they will have to do a 1-minute presentation. And then in the day-to-day, they will do like a lot of demos. So we want people to actually have like a lot of chances to like show what they do and who they are and whatsoever. Then the second part of the onboarding, it's more like internal processes. So how we do communications, how we do product management, what they can expect from the design team, the comms team, and just like generic different workflows that we have in the company. And the last section of the onboarding, it's technical onboarding. So they will do like pair programming sessions, specific training sessions, so such as like quality standards, coding standards, or writing standards, depending on the role, to actually make sure that they know how are things working right now, and once they know how are things working, they can like suggest improvements. And there's like a last part that it's like the check-in. I like to, after they completed the onboarding, I always have a call with them to check in to see if they missed something, and also to get feedback on the onboarding and improve it. So far, the feedback has been pretty positive, and people normally say that they never had such a structured onboarding in other companies.
Yeah, no, I think that's a great point. And I think that's a really important factor to consider, is that idea of keeping process, maintaining a rigid structure, things like that. As a sort of creative minded guy, I'm not particularly drawn to process. So it's kind of funny because, sort of to my own detriment, I don't spend as much time on process as I should, because then when I come around and have to develop the process to solve my problem, it's like, oh God, I should have just done this from the beginning. So it makes perfect sense, for people who are hiring or in companies large and small, that, develop a strong hiring process. It's really important.
I think it's important to make a difference between bureaucracy and processes. We hate bureaucracy, we love processes. And the thing is that when you make very simple processes, for people that are just getting started and very lost, it's very easy for them to just follow something and just get started. Whereas if it's what they found is like chaos and they have to rely on everyone's input to actually continue doing stuff, that makes like everything way less effective and like delays a lot like the productivity of that new hire.
Yeah, no, that's a good point. So once you've onboarded, we're past all that step. I wanted to talk a little bit about, you mentioned earlier that, one of the things that you really make sure to point out to your candidates is this idea of growth potential or career growth. Mm-hmm. And I wondered if you talk about sort of what you guys do, or in your experience, what you like to do in terms of making sure that people are hitting sort of career goals, life goals, that sort of stuff. I think sometimes there's a proclivity with some companies where they'll just go hire for new skills versus upskilling their own staff. Mm-hmm. And I wondered too, if you would maybe touch on that a little bit, and sort of, if there are certain characteristics or certain things that you would train for versus things that you might hire out.
I think both hiring skills and upskilling existing employees are two strategies that are perfectly valid. I think the first one, kind of you're gonna face like challenges of coordination and having a very big team, which is like a lot of middle management and just like a less of a family sense. Whereas if you want to keep a small team, you don't have another option than just like making sure that everyone like grows as the company grows. And then you can build like a stronger like culture within the people that stay for over the years. For us, talent development, it's very personal, so it depends on each person that we have in the team. We have 3 types of development. One is like you want to become a leader or you have to become a manager, so that's more like executive coaching or leadership skills. That it's a combination between putting you into certain challenges and having like recurrent coaching sessions with me. There's another type of training that it's more kind of leveling up technical skills. So we set a training program that has a duration between 30 days and 90 days. And then you have very specific goals and very specific like checkpoints along the way. So we make sure that you have all the resources that you might need and we track it in a continuous way. So we meet certain goals. And if we are unable to meet that certain goals of upskilling in a certain area, someone, we can actually like maybe put someone else to be like a pair in that training process, or something else. And then the last option for training is like the training that is more like self-made. So we have just like a one personal development session where I understand what are like the things that you might need, and then we align kind of those expectations. I make sure that you can have like this growth potential within the company, but it's more something that you do by yourself. So people will like find their own resources, and they will find their own external mentors or advisors. And the only role that we play is just like making sure that we will support that growth.
Okay. So how do you set like goals or metrics around this stuff? Like, is everything tied to the business making more money, or how much of it is really about, other aspects of life, so making sure people are happy, making sure they're feeling satisfied or whatever, maybe things that you can't monetize necessarily. Maybe they become better performers, or what they're doing is more valuable, so the business is benefiting. But I mean, how much of it is I guess driven by sort of strictly business metrics versus how much you're doing just sort of on the self-improvement front?
I think we do a pretty bad job on putting business metrics as a priority in general. For me, myself, and the type of management team that we have, we definitely prioritize retention. And the way you increase retention and you increase happiness in the team is basically making sure that people feel that they progress. So for us, like those goals are more like people really growing as individuals. And they normally grow more in soft skills than hard skills. Because also like it changes. Like in a small team, you will probably wear many hats. So if we put a lot of resources to develop yourself as a specialist, and then we want you to switch to another project, you probably won't be able to do so. But if instead we train you to be able to be like a generalist with the ability to go deep into any topic and have like an effective communication style, and also ability to coordinate, do project management, and just become like making everyone to become architects somehow, or kind of community advocates. Those are skills that are going to be kind of beneficial in the long term in whatever project you're involved.
That makes sense. So you bring up soft skills, and I wonder if we could maybe talk about that a little bit. So, I mean, it's clear that, as I guess what the vernacular is like as a people first type organization, somebody who's obviously putting maybe the well-being of their staff and their well-being of their teams ahead of maybe the well-beings of the business, so long as the business continues to thrive. I wonder if you could talk a little bit about just sort of the development of these soft skills. So, I mean, there are a lot of different things involved, they all the way down to emotional intelligence, coordination with other people, people management, critical thinking, all these different kinds of things. I mean, what do you guys have? I mean, since everything is so process driven with you guys, do you have specific processes around these developing specific skill sets, or are people sort of left to their own devices? So if they're put on a team and they have to problem solve, they may develop some of these skills throughout that process, but it's not necessarily, driven by process that they're creating those skills.
In that specific for soft skills, it's either we pair you with someone that already have those skills. So it's by like we put you in challenges with someone else that already had those skills. So it's like both imitation and you pushing yourself to learn some of those skills. But the most common way we're developing soft skills is actually through coaching. So I have like coaching sessions with specific people in the team, and then depending on their specific role and kind of the goals that we have for that role and the OKRs of that quarter, we focus on certain types of training. For my coaching sessions, I use like all sorts of techniques, and sometimes you have to get like very creative. So since I grew up in Spain, I like emotions, and people in Latino kind of cultures are way more emotional maybe than other cultures. So I like people to be angry. I like people to cry. I like people to be super happy. So I want people to have like extreme emotions, so they remember as well, like not only through the learning process of that specific coaching session, but also like through the emotion, what they've learned.
Yeah. Okay. So, back to, or I mean, I guess continuing the soft skills discussion. So when you're doing your hiring, we were talking about our hiring processes, and obviously people are applying for a specific position or a specific, something that they think that they can apply a skill or something to. How much do these soft skills weigh into that? Like, is there a sort of a boundary or a metric that you look for in terms of they need to have a certain level of skill in, maybe, I don't know, maybe they're great communication, or they have great communication skills, or maybe they're good negotiators or something. Like, do you weight different soft skills differently in terms of, the actual hiring process?
I think so. I think like for us, it's very important to weight soft skills and to weight attitude. Probably attitude is easier for us, like having, you need to be someone who's hungry to learn because there's like everything is to be done in the blockchain space. And then you need to be ambitious, but and competitive, but in a healthy way. So it's not about like shadowing anyone else or like you growing a lot and letting everyone behind. In terms of soft skills, internal communication skills are very important. We don't care that much in external communication skill unless you have a role that involves like having like external communications. Internal communication skills means that you have like some level of confidence in the way you communicate. You have to be an effective communicator. So if you spend a lot of time with a lot of words, or you constantly need to have calls with people to actually make yourself understandable, that's probably a red flag, because that will make everything slower and our workflows wouldn't really work for you. People need to be self-managers. When you don't work in an office, you have less control, and probably at home you have a lot of distractions. So you have to have the ability to maybe not to manage other people and coordinate projects, but at least you have to demonstrate that you're very diligent with yourself. And then the last thing is probably this kind of attention to detail, or kind of the ability to go down rabbit holes and be very technical and very detail oriented about something, but at the same time knowing where to stop. Otherwise, it's very unproductive. And those are the things that we measure a lot, and it's very important for us for all sorts of candidates.
Okay. So those, you would say, I guess, then are sort of the skills you look for in a hire versus sort of the skill you want to cultivate in a hire. So like if you've got a guy who, let's say, is a great programmer or something, and but maybe not the best self-manager, like you're not necessarily looking to bring someone on and teach them to become a self-manager. You might shop around until you find the great programmer who is a self-manager.
Yeah, there are things, I think, like when you hire someone, there are some trade-offs with the level of experience they have, with the level of seniority they have as a professional, which are different things for me. Kind of one is maturity, and the other one is like actual technical skills. And we can have like different trade-offs for one and the other. But there are some things that they come on a mix or maybe it's because like it's gonna take us. We could train them, but it's gonna take us so much time to train them on like being a self-manager. And it's just like if you haven't learned to be very responsible and very like kind of structured with your time, teaching you that it's part of the baseline we require. So that would mean that you won't be able to be productive in 3 months. Probably you'll be able to be productive in 1 year, and that is something that we just cannot afford.
Yeah, and I think that makes sense. And I guess then, so I mean, if we're going to try and speak to the prospective hire or somebody who might be looking for a remote job, doing some sort of self-assessment and being able to look at our skills, might sort of help set us up better for success. So in the case, or the example we've been using, this idea of being a self-manager, if there are a certain set of skills around self-management, managing your time, staying organized, good communication, that sort of stuff, those would be the types of skills that you might encourage somebody to work on prior to applying to a position with a company like Aragon One, or maybe anybody that they want to work for remotely. I mean, would that be fair to say that that's sort of where you're at?
Yeah, and I say that it's as easy to develop as like really being comfortable asking for feedback. What I most commonly found is that a lot of people aren't used to like getting feedback from everyone. So they are only used to have feedback from their managers. So the type of feedback that you will get from your manager in more traditional companies is probably very business results oriented, more than kind of this personal development. Whereas if you are used to getting feedback from anyone in the team and you request feedback proactively as well, those are the type of people that normally come with a level of maturity as a professional higher than the people who haven't done that before.
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. One of the things you talked about in there, especially as it pertains to soft skills and either working people through problems or helping them, I guess, grow or develop the skills that they do have, is you mentioned coaching and this idea of sort of, a relationship that sounds like you have a very close relationship with many of the people who work for you or work with you anyway. And so I wonder, for a lot of people, maybe the terminology or sort of the vernacular we use is this idea of one-on-ones. And so I wondered if you talk a little bit about just sort of thinking, about the importance of a one-on-one or how critical these are to your process.
I think like one-on-ones, it's useful for the people to have the chance to express the things that they might not be able to express in other contexts. But it's also very useful for the company or the managers to get a pull check of what's the status of the team member, right? So it will help a lot to prevent like potential problems that this person might have, or to resolve kind of things that are unclear from a strategy perspective, and making sure that those people are aligned. I had discussion with some kind of startups that I started to advise and consult with, that they feel that kind of one-on-ones are a waste of time. And the truth is, it's a waste of time in the short term, because like in the short term, the first one-on-ones that you're gonna have are gonna be very awkward, and you won't know like what to ask and what to say. But that's like a training process. It's like creating a relationship, right? And what I believe in is that when you actually establish like this type of relationship with someone, being like someone in the team or other people, think about like your friends. There's always this concept of like, this person is such a good friend that we don't even need to talk, that I know what they're thinking. So if you have the ability to develop that sense of connection with everyone in your team, that's like a long-term way of saving time and preventing a lot of like conflicts that can be solved just like by having a better relationship with everyone else. And the only way I found to make that happen is actually like spending this time to have one-on-ones and asking those questions you want to ask like in a regular weekly meeting.
Yeah, no, I think that makes sense to me. In your experience, either in other organizations or just, in your training or over the course of your career, have you found, anything in particular wrong with one-on-ones that you've resolved that you do somehow differently now?
In the way I execute the one-on-ones?
Well, maybe in the way that you've experienced them in the past, maybe been a part of them or observed them. Maybe there was something wrong with the process or something that you've improved or made more efficient or optimized for the way that you do them now that you're leading them.
I think like the thing that I changed the most is that at the beginning you believe so much in the process that you try to stick with it. And what I learned is that it's important that to have like to stick with the processes and make sure that they happen, but you need to be very flexible with people. So there's people in the team that you won't benefit for having like a lot of regular one-on-ones, and there's a lot of people in the team that you will actually benefit from having regular one-on-ones. So for me, it's important that you prepare beforehand each of these meetings and constantly reevaluate like what's the cadence that suits better anyone in the team. And just be flexible. There's some people that it's going to be once a quarter, once a month, or weekly one-on-ones. And making sure that you change the questions and making sure that you remember things. Like for me, that's actually like a key takeaway that I've taken from my experience having like one-on-ones with people, that when I started to take notes from previous conversations that I had, instead of just like repeating the same questions, like just like starting the conversation from zero, I actually got way higher engagement and way more insights. And in general, it's more natural. Feel more natural to ask people like, hey, how was it since we talked, more than how is it right now?
Yeah. Well, I think that makes sense, right? I mean, especially if you're speaking sort of about development of relationships, and that's ultimately what you're talking about. You know, I mean, we're sitting here having discussion about building a real life relationship, not just a employee-employer relationship, but I mean, this is another human being that you're working with. And so I think it's important, just like you would on a first date or with somebody you're trying to have a relationship with or whatever. I mean, of course, it's critical to remember what you've talked about, right? And I can understand at scale, it might be difficult when you've got a lot of employees or a lot of people. So, you know, it's hard to remember what 500 people said to you. But I think the more you can do that, or the more that you can actually sort of call back to prior conversations, because obviously for that individual, it's very personal. You know, they can recognize the fact, or, you know, they only have to remember having talked to you. You have to remember having talked to everyone else, you know? So, but I think that that's a great point that you make, this idea that you're sort of calling back to old parts of the conversation and actually making sure that you're moving the needle, I guess, instead of, you know, starting from zero every time.
I mean, on that, to be honest, I don't remember the conversations. What I do is like taking notes and prepare the conversations based on the notes that I had like from the previous session. So it's very important that the way you take notes, it's a very structured way. And in our case, for us, is for meetings and note taking, Notion and Navigator are our like key tools that we use to actually make sure that we remember everything that we talked about and the decisions we make. And both like Navigator helps me to have like recurrent topics, and helps me to jump to the previous agenda for a specific meeting very easily. And Notion lets me filter by date or person or topic very easily. So I use that. It's definitely not me remembering everyone's life, but just like making sure, like it's a combination of being very human, but at the same time leveraging the technology we have at our hand.
Yeah, no, well, I mean, you know, we only have so much bandwidth, right? You can't remember everything about every person. And so, of course, I mean, it makes sense to have, you know, some cheat sheets. And I mean, like even in preparing for this show, I mean, you and I had spoken, I don't know, maybe a month ago at this point, right? And so we now have to, or I had to sort of go back and look at my notes and refresh what we talked about. And, you know, I had made some notes to prep for the show and everything based on topics we'd discussed prior and things like that. I mean, so it makes sense. You have to kind of prime it. But I think what that is basically this intention to do well, right? I mean, like I'm putting in effort because it's important to me that our conversation is meaningful, that people can actually take something from it, right? So as it pertains to one-on-ones, you're doing the same thing, right? You're setting this intention that you actually want to get something out of this. You're not just doing it because it's an item on a checklist. We must do a one-on-one every so often. Rather, you're actually trying to do a check-in and make sure that on whatever topic you happen to be making progress. So I think it makes a lot of sense, and I don't think it's cheating to leverage technology. So as it pertains to one-on-ones, I mean, you mentioned, you know, having structure, and we've just sort of talked about intention, bringing intention to it. Are there different types of one-on-ones that you have with people? So, you know, maybe around personal goals versus around work goals or those sorts of things. Like, how often are you meeting, and are you, you know, having multiple meetings but for different purposes specifically?
Mm-hmm. I don't have one-on-ones with everyone in the team. The people that have weekly one-on-ones are kind of managers and managees, and I make sure that everyone in the team has weekly one-on-ones with at least one of like the management team. So there's always someone who is like in sync with company goals and everyone else goals and that specific person goals. So those will be like the weekly one-on-ones. The ones that I do in that cadence are the people that they report to me directly. And for those, I have to confess that most of the time you mix a lot of like work stuff, because on a weekly basis there are so many changes in the personal life of people. So you mix a lot of work stuff. What I try to do is that at least once a quarter, because that's where you see like most of the shift and you have like most of the time to work on like growth objectives. We have like a longer one-to-one that it's focused specifically on like what are your expectations, my expectations, and aligning that and setting very few goals for the following quarter. For me, I think it's important that there's some people that when they do one-on-one, they have like a lot of expectations and they want to get like a lot of improvement done as soon as possible. I prefer to just have like one goal and making sure that we actually fulfill that goal very well in terms of personal development. And for everyone else in the team, I normally have just like monthly or quarterly one-on-ones, depending if they are someone closer to a leadership role or not. Because for people that are closer in a leadership role, what I do is to do like kind of the one-on-one for that person and checking in on all the people that they are that they have reports. And then for the people that they don't have a leadership role, I have like a quarterly one-on-one where I check in kind of more the feedback and aligning the feedback that I have from their manager, from like the feedback that they have from their own. And just like those ones, I say like minus the ones that I have on a weekly basis that I mix like task and work stuff very easily. All the other ones are very focused on leadership, talent development, aligning expectations in terms of growth, and making sure that the perception of productivity and the perception of quality of output is the same across the people that they work with.
Okay. So I wondered, you brought up goal setting and this idea of setting goals, and obviously, you know, people have different thresholds for how much they want to pay attention to the goals. You know, some people, as you mentioned, are trying to accomplish many things at once. And so, but your advice is to sort of narrow it down to one. Do you have any, I guess, additional advice in and around setting goals, either as an employee or as an employer, so that we can actually reach them? You know, so many of us are guilty of making these big, bold goals, but they're not very clear. They don't really define what it is we're supposed to be doing, rather than sort of maybe a future state of being. Mm-hmm. And so I wonder if you could talk a little bit about just sort of goal setting and the types of things that you might use when coaching someone through making a goal.
I think like you can take a goal setting up like a product roadmap, the same way that you do like a personal development roadmap. So you have like a longer term, maybe 1 year term kind of set of goals that you want to meet. And then you break that down into quarterly goals that you can meet. And then those quarterly goals, you make sure you have like the resources that are both like kind of things that you can read and people that you can rely on, the time to do so. So you have like regular check-ins. And then finally, you also have like a lot of clarity on what does like success look like. Because some goals is just like, I want to be a better communicator, but what does like a good communicator look like? So define very well what everything means and what are the tools that you're going to use and in what cadence that's going to happen. Structure and being like a lot of structure, a lot of like writing it down, because some people like do it a lot in like speaking, and when you speak with someone you understand different things, so writing is very important. And then making sure that the time frame is as small as possible with very little but specific goals. I say maximum of 3 a quarter, and that will make like 12 improvements a year, and that's a lot for personal development already.
Well, yeah, and it makes sense. If you were to look back over the course of the year, if you actually pulled off 12 goals, it actually would feel like quite a bit of success. You know, maybe with no context around it, or if you're sitting in a, you know, in a room writing out goals or something, 12 might not seem like a lot. But I think in real life, when you actually, look back at that, you would go, wow, that's a lot to have accomplished. Finally, as we're sort of starting to get here to the end, I wanted to talk a little bit about sort of self-assessment and evaluation. Maybe, how do we quantify the improvements and the changes we're making? So, I mean, obviously achieving some of these goals that we've just defined, is one metric for doing that. But how do you guys, sort of manage that? Again, maybe it's more in and around the soft skill development, the things that are a little harder to quantify or to sort of, pin a metric to. How are you looking at the improvements and the changes?
I think comparison is like the best way to look at it. And the thing is that if you compare constantly and you have a record of each time that you're doing a check-in, it's easier to compare than just like looking back. The human brain, it's very bad at remembering details, and we have a very small level of that. Like, I don't even remember what I had for dinner yesterday. So how am I going to remember how I evolved over the course of these 3 months? Maybe I remember 2 highlights, but I'm not going to remember the details. So in a company-wide fashion, what we do is that during the 360 review, we have a very intense self-assessment that it's written and that you keep. So every year you can compare one assessment to the other. Within that assessment, there's a part of asking you, what were your expectations at the beginning of the year and what you actually accomplished by the end of the year. So there's already like a delta difference that you can compare yourself and look at yourself. And there's also another section where you actually like set expectations for the following year. So if you compare one or the other over the course of the years, it's very easy to see and perceive that growth. Another way to perceive this growth is, again, feedback. So it's not you assessing yourself, but you proactively asking people to assess you. So by comparing the perception that different people that work with you closely have in the team, you can also like get a lot of insights on how you've been progressing as a professional.
No, I think that's a really good insight, actually, this idea that, as part of self-assessment is asking other people. I think for many of us, when we think self-assessment, we think we need to go down a checklist or we need to find some online, survey to take or, whatever, but it's very singularly focused. We're looking in ourselves, we're trying to solve this problem for ourselves. And I think it's true, if you, in order to get real context about where you are or how you think you're doing, hearing it from other people. I mean, even in my own life, I can think of a million examples like this where I'm, down on myself for not having accomplished something, or, maybe I didn't reach a goal or hit a number I wanted to hit. And, but then somebody outside will remind me and go, yeah, but you did all this. Like, it's okay that you didn't do that because my God, you did all this, and so, but without having somebody's objective opinion to sort of go off of, it's really difficult to, I guess, understand where we are in space.
There's a very simple concept that I learned reading a book or somewhere that it says like, humans were born with eyes that were looking outside the world outside them, not the world inside them. So we're always better at assessing other people than looking at ourselves. So for me, it's very obvious that if you're doing a self-assessment, of course, you need to first like do your job and just like asking yourself some questions. But for me, it's useless if you do that if you don't actually ask for the eyes that are constantly looking at you, right?
Yeah, no, I think that makes a lot of sense. And I think it's also probably a good spot to wrap up this conversation. So let's, where can people find out more about you, either Aragon One or you personally? How can people get in touch?
So people can look at our project and the progress of our project and join our community chats at aragon.org. If they want to learn more about our company, they can look at Aragon.one, and they can find me in social media at Monica Zeng. That's like my username for Twitter, Telegram, and everything that, and all the chats that they want to reach out to me.
Excellent. Well, cool. Well, thank you so much, Monica. I'm thrilled to death we got to finally have this conversation, and I can't wait to share it with everybody. So thanks so much for doing this.
Thank you very much for hosting me, and I hope that this conversation serves, it's helpful for someone, and I'll be looking forward to hearing all the conversations that you have lined up.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Monica. I appreciate it. And thanks to everybody who tuned in this week and every week, and we'll see you guys next time.
I don't owe you anything. I don't owe you anything.